October 27, 1943. Mono Island, Treasury Islands. A Japanese machine gun position is hammering the Allied landing zone when an American bulldozer suddenly turns toward the gun instead of away from it. Machinist's mate Aurelio Tassoni of the U.S. Navy's 87th Naval Construction Battalion is 28 years old, sitting behind steel controls on a machine designed to move earth, not attack soldiers. Bullets crack against metal and tear through the tropical growth around him. Ahead stands a Japanese pillbox made from heavy logs and earth, its firing slit-spitting bursts toward New Zealand troops near Falamai. Lieutenant Charles E. Turnbull tells Tassone that the position has to be silenced. There is no tank immediately available to do it. Tassone pushes the throttle forward. The diesel engine deepens into a roar. Steel tracks bite into the ground. The bulldozer moves straight toward the pillbox while Turnbull and New Zealand infantrymen provide covering fire. Tassone lifts the blade, crashes through the obstacles in front of the position, and drives into the emplacement itself. Logs break. Earth collapses. The gun mount overturns. Men inside are crushed beneath timber, soil, and the weight of the machine. When investigators examine the wreckage, 12 Japanese defenders are found dead. Tassone eventually receives the Silver Star, but something more important than one decoration has just happened. American troops have discovered that the machine building their roads can also erase the fortifications blocking them. The Treasury Islands operation looks small compared with Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Iwo Jima, or Okinawa, but its location makes it part of a much larger Allied strategy. Vice Admiral William F. Halsey's South Pacific forces are closing on the Japanese fortress of Rabaul while preparing the November 1943 landing at Bougainville. The Treasury Islands sit south of Bougainville and only a short distance from Japanese positions in the Shortlands. Brigadier Robert Rowe's New Zealand 8th Brigade Group receives the task of taking Mono and Sterling Islands, supported by American naval, anti-aircraft, communications, and construction units. The initial assault brings about 3,795 Allied troops ashore, with the force eventually growing to more than 6,500. For New Zealand, the landing is historic. Its soldiers have not conducted an opposed amphibious assault since Gallipoli in 1915. The Japanese garrison is far smaller, but the terrain favors men who know how to disappear. Jungle, caves, ridges, log bunkers, and concealed firing positions make a few hundred defenders capable of causing disproportionate trouble. By the end of the fighting, New Zealand forces suffer 40 killed and 120 Japanese soldiers are killed. Yet the battlefield is only half the mission. As soon as ground is captured, engineers must turn it into radar sites, roads, beaches, dumps, and an airbase from which the next offensive can be supported. That means bulldozers have to go ashore almost with the infantry, and the Japanese are about to learn what happens when construction equipment enters a battlefield before the shooting stops. The men operating those machines belong to one of the most unusual military organizations created by the United States during the war. The Naval Construction Battalions, the Seabees, are born from a simple problem exposed after Pearl Harbor. The Navy needs bases built in combat zones, but civilian contractors cannot legally be expected to fight while constructing them. So the United States turns carpenters, miners, electricians, mechanics, ironworkers, plumbers, road builders, heavy equipment operators, and construction foremen into uniformed sailors who can carry rifles as easily as surveying instruments. Their motto becomes, "Can do." By the end of World War II, roughly 325,000 men serve in Seabee organizations, representing more than 60 skilled trades. They build airfields on coral islands, fuel farms in jungles, docks, hospitals, warehouses, roads, pipelines, bridges, and entire bases where nothing existed days earlier. They also operate the Caterpillar tractors and bulldozers that become symbols of American industrial power in the Pacific. These machines are not elegant weapons. A bulldozer is slow, its operator is exposed, its blade cannot fire a shell, but it can do something a rifle cannot. It can physically change the battlefield. Trees disappear, trenches are filled, coral walls are cut down, craters vanish beneath pushed earth. A machine gun nest that survives bombardment can suddenly find tons of soil moving toward its firing slit. And on Mono Island, Tassone proves that the difference between engineering and assault can disappear in a few seconds. For the Japanese soldier inside a fortified position, artillery and a bulldozer create different kinds of fear. Artillery is violent but impersonal. A shell screams in, explodes, and either kills you or does not. A bunker can survive dozens of near misses. A cave dug deep into coral or volcanic rock may withstand naval gunfire that would destroy an ordinary building. Once the barrage ends, the defender can crawl back to his firing slit, clear the dust, and resume shooting. The bulldozer is different. Its approach means the enemy knows exactly where you are. The sound does not pass overhead. It comes closer. The engine grows louder. The tracks grind against coral. The blade scrapes rock, timber, and earth. If the defenders cannot stop it, their position may not simply be damaged. It may cease to exist. Entrances can be sealed. Firing apertures can be covered. Trenches can be filled. Vegetation hiding a bunker can be stripped away so tanks and flamethrowers can reach it. The Americans eventually combine bulldozers with riflemen, machine guns, tanks, demolition teams, and flamethrowers, creating a system in which the earth itself becomes a weapon. No surviving official Japanese document proves that every defender literally uses the exact phrase, "more frightening than artillery." But the battlefield record explains why the sound of a diesel engine approaching a cave can communicate something artillery cannot. The bombardment is over, the Americans have found you, and now they are coming close enough to bury your position. The next island shows why that possibility matters. November 20th, 1943. Betio Island, Tarawa Atoll. Marines of Major General Julian C. Smith's 2nd Marine Division moved toward a defensive system prepared by Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki's Japanese garrison. Tarawa compresses thousands of men onto an island barely 2 miles long. Concrete bunkers, coconut log pillboxes, trenches, anti-tank ditches, coastal guns, mines, and firing positions create overlapping fields of fire across the beaches. The pre-landing bombardment is massive by the standards of 1943. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and aircraft pound Betio. American planners hope the defenders will be stunned or destroyed. They are neither. As the first assault waves approach, many Japanese positions reopen. The tide stays too low for ordinary landing craft to cross the reef. Marines in later waves climb out hundreds of yards offshore and wade toward the beach, while machine gun bullets strike the water around them. Amphibian tractors carrying the first waves are hit repeatedly. Of 125 available to the 2nd Marine Division, 90 are eventually knocked out or disabled during the battle. The 1st Battalion, 8th Marines alone, suffers roughly 230 killed and wounded from an original strength of about 850 men. For 76 hours, Marines attack one strongpoint after another at ranges measured in yards. The lesson becomes undeniable. Bombardment alone does not reliably destroy deeply prepared defenses. Somebody still has to approach the surviving bunker, and the Pacific War begins searching for machines that can help infantrymen close those final murderous yards. Tarawa becomes a laboratory written in blood. Marines discover that a position appearing dead after naval gunfire may reopen the moment infantry passes it. Engineers carry satchel charges toward firing slits. Flamethrower operators expose themselves at terrifyingly short range. Tanks provide mobile protection and direct fire. But coral, shell holes, seawalls, mines, and soft sand restrict their movement. Bulldozers appear mostly as engineering machines, clearing routes and helping turn wrecked terrain into something vehicles can cross. Yet their potential is becoming obvious. Every path a bulldozer cuts lets a tank advance where the Japanese believe armor cannot go. Every crater filled lets ammunition move forward. Every obstruction removed changes the angles from which a strongpoint can be attacked. The machine does not have to kill the defender directly to help destroy him. That is the first larger transformation. American firepower in the Pacific is becoming an ecosystem. Naval guns suppress. Aircraft bomb. Artillery isolates. Infantry locates. Tanks fire directly into embrasures. Flamethrowers force men away from firing ports. Engineers blast entrances. Bulldozers open access and then, when terrain permits, push the wreckage over what remains. The Japanese response will be to dig deeper, because the surface is becoming too dangerous to hold. But digging deeper creates a new problem. A bunker built above ground can be shattered. A cave can survive, yet every cave must still breathe, communicate, and possess an entrance, which means the defensive revolution the Japanese are beginning will make the bulldozer even more useful, rather than less. By the middle of 1944, Japan's island defense doctrine is changing. Earlier garrisons often concentrate heavily near the shoreline and launch counterattacks intended to throw Americans back into the sea. The results are catastrophic. American naval gunfire and artillery can slaughter troops exposed in mass movement, while tanks and automatic weapons devastate night attacks. Japanese commanders begin adopting a more sophisticated approach. Avoid wasting the garrison at the waterline, build mutually supporting positions inland, use caves and reverse slopes, force Americans to fight for every ridge, and make the battle last long enough to inflict politically painful casualties. Saipan, invaded on June 15, 1944, gives the Americans a frightening preview. Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito's defenders exploit natural and man-made caves across an island far larger than Betio. Some contain ammunition, food, command posts, hospitals, and steel doors protecting firing positions. Marines burn one entrance, blast it, move past, and discover Japanese troops firing from it again the next day because another exit connects to the same underground complex. Official Marine histories describe how flame-throwing tanks, demolition teams, grenades, automatic weapons, and engineers become necessary for cave warfare. Bulldozers flatten cane fields, hiding snipers, and prepare paths through ground previously considered impassable. The Americans are learning that killing a cave system requires control not only of its entrance, but of the terrain surrounding it. The battlefield starts to acquire a terrifying rhythm. First comes reconnaissance. A rifleman sees muzzle flash from a black opening in a ridge. Machine guns pin the opening. A tank creeps forward and fires high explosive directly into it. A flamethrower vehicle or infantry operator sends burning fuel across the mouth. Engineers crawl close, carrying demolition charges. If the position survives, earth-moving equipment may be brought forward to improve the route, push protective berms, fill nearby trenches, expose secondary apertures, or seal an entrance. To an American infantryman, the bulldozer's arrival can sound reassuring because it means a machine is about to do work that would otherwise require men with shovels and explosives under fire. To a Japanese soldier underground, it signals the opposite. Artillery gives warning through impact. A bulldozer gives warning through approach. It takes time. The defender can hear the machine working somewhere outside without seeing it. A cave amplifies vibration. Metal tracks striking stone transmit through the ground. Dust shakes loose from walls. The engine stops, reverses, then advances again. If the exit is already covered by American rifles, stepping outside to attack the operator may mean instant death. If the defenders stay inside, the blade may begin pushing coral and rubble across the mouth. The machine's slow speed becomes part of the terror because there is time to understand exactly what is happening. And by September 1944, that method meets the most elaborate Japanese cave defense yet encountered. September 15, 1944, Peleliu, Palau Islands. Major General William H. Rupertus sends the 1st Marine Division against a Japanese garrison commanded by Colonel Kunio Nakagawa. American planners expect a hard battle, but Rupertus famously hopes the island can be secured within a few days. The assumption dies almost immediately. Nakagawa has adopted the new defensive concept in depth. He does not waste the bulk of his troops in suicidal charges at the shoreline. Positions along the beaches slow the landing, but the heart of the defense lies in the Umabrogol Massif, a nightmare of coral ridges, ravines, caves, tunnels, hidden gun positions, and mutually supporting strongpoints. Temperatures rise beyond 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Water becomes precious. Marines crawl across exposed coral under mortar and sniper fire. Ridges receive names like Bloody Nose because ordinary map coordinates cannot describe the misery of fighting over them. The 1st Marine Regiment under Colonel Louis Chesty Puller suffers devastating losses as it attacks the heights. A Japanese gun may fire 3 rounds from a cave and then disappear behind a steel door. Marines climb a ridge believing it clear, only to receive fire from beneath or behind them. Naval shells blast rock from the surface while men underground remain alive. The Japanese have finally built a battlefield specifically designed to absorb American firepower, and now Americans begin using engineering power to dismantle it, piece by piece. Peleliu demonstrates why a bulldozer is much more than a construction vehicle. Tanks cannot attack if they cannot reach the ridge. Flamethrowers cannot burn a cave if coral pinnacles block the route. Artillery cannot move forward if every supply vehicle must cross ground cut by shell holes and ravines. Engineers therefore push roads through shattered terrain while fighting continues yards away. Bulldozers cut paths, widen routes, remove debris, and provide access for armor. Where caves permit it, earth and rubble can be pushed toward entrances after suppressive fire drives defenders inside. The combination is brutal. A tank may fire at the mouth, while infantry covers side exits. Engineers approach with explosives. A bulldozer then transforms the destroyed rock into a plug. The Japanese answer with mines, artillery, anti-tank guns, infiltration, and direct attacks on operators. Bulldozer drivers are vulnerable because the machine is neither fast nor heavily armored like a tank. An operator may have only steel in front of him and open air around his body. Yet if infantry can suppress the defenders for a few minutes, the dozer can accomplish what hours of bombardment sometimes cannot: physically reshape the strong point so it no longer functions. That is why the engine sound begins to carry tactical meaning. It does not promise another shell. It promises that the Americans intend to stay close until the position is gone. Peleliu also reveals the limitation of pure destruction. A cave mouth can be sealed and later reopened from inside. A tunnel may connect to another ravine hundreds of feet away. Or Japanese troops deliberately build alternate exits, ventilation shafts, observation points, and firing chambers. Americans therefore learn not to declare a position dead simply because flames disappear into it. Infantry must watch. Engineers must inspect. Tanks must remain nearby. Exits have to be covered. The process is slow, exhausting, and intimate. A Marine may spend an entire day fighting for 50 yards of ridge. Grenades explode inside crevices. The smell of burned fuel mixes with coral dust and decomposing bodies. At night, Japanese soldiers crawl through openings Americans do not know exist and attack rear positions. Every morning, the same ridges seem to come alive again. This is precisely the environment in which bulldozers become psychologically powerful. Their presence means the attackers are not merely firing and moving on. They are modifying the ground to prevent the defense from regenerating. Paths appear where Japanese planners count on cliffs. Berms rise where American troops need protection. Cave mouths vanish beneath rubble. The longer the battle continues, the more the surface of Peleliu changes to suit the attacker. Nakagawa's defense inflicts horrific losses. The 1st Marine Division suffers thousands of casualties before being relieved. But it cannot stop an enemy capable of rebuilding the battlefield while fighting across it. On November 27, 1944, organized resistance in Peleliu's Umabrogol pocket is finally declared ended after the Army's 81st Infantry Division takes over much of the remaining reduction from the exhausted Marines. The operation has lasted more than 2 months, not the handful of days once imagined. The Japanese defensive concept is brutally effective at imposing casualties, and American commanders understand that future islands will contain even deeper systems. But the United States carries another lesson forward. The answer is not simply more artillery. Peleliu has already received enormous quantities of bombs and shells. The answer is tighter combined arms at close range. Infantry, tanks, flamethrowers, engineers, artillery, and construction equipment must work as one mechanism. Each solves a problem the others cannot. A 155mm gun can smash exposed rock, but cannot see around a ridge. An infantry squad can locate a firing port, but may not survive crossing open ground to reach it. A flamethrower can clear a chamber, but has limited range. A bulldozer cannot defend itself well, but can build the path that carries every other weapon forward. The Americans are turning industrial abundance into a tactical method, and the next battlefield will force them to use that method against a commander who has studied exactly how they fight. February 19, 1945. Iwo Jima. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi waits beneath an island transformed into a fortress. Roughly 21,000 Japanese defenders occupy tunnels, caves, blockhouses, artillery positions, and command posts carved into volcanic rock. Kuribayashi knows the US Marines will bring overwhelming naval gunfire. He therefore forbids the kind of wasteful beach defense that destroyed earlier garrisons. American forces are allowed to land and crowd onto the black volcanic beaches before Japanese guns open with coordinated fire. The result is chaos. Shells slam into packed landing zones. Mortars erupt among ammunition piles. Marines sink into soft volcanic ash that makes running almost impossible. Vehicles bog down. The terraces behind the beach create natural obstacles. Bulldozers immediately become critical because someone has to cut exits through the volcanic embankments and create roads across terrain churned by shell fire. Operators work while Japanese artillery still reaches the beaches. The machine pushing dirt for logistics is already part of combat survival. Without those routes, tanks cannot move inland efficiently. Artillery cannot be positioned. Wounded men cannot be evacuated quickly, and ammunition cannot reach rifle companies. Kuribayashi has designed his defenses to survive American bombardment, but he cannot prevent American engineers from slowly converting his volcanic island into a transportation network aimed directly at him. The soundscape of Iwo Jima is almost continuous violence. Naval rifles hammer ridges. Marine artillery answers Japanese mortars. Aircraft dive toward suspected positions. Machine guns chatter from caves. Tanks fire point blank. Beneath all of it, bulldozers grind forward. They clear wrecked vehicles from beach lanes. They cut ramps. They carve roads through ash. They push spoil into protective walls. They open routes to artillery positions and eventually help assault units reach terrain Japanese engineers assume will restrict American armor. Every hour of construction makes the American position stronger. This is another reason the bulldozer creates a fear artillery cannot. Artillery destroys, but its effects are temporary unless troops exploit them. Construction accumulates. A road built in the morning remains in the afternoon. A filled crater stays filled. A firing lane stripped of vegetation does not grow back during the battle. A sealed opening remains blocked until men risk digging it out. Japanese defensive warfare depends on buying time, yet American engineering turns time against the defender. The longer Marines remain ashore, the more roads, dumps, gun positions, communication lines, and vehicle routes appear behind them. Kuribayashi's men can watch the island being converted from Japanese fortress into American base, while they are still fighting inside it. And the machines doing that work rarely stop merely because bullets are falling. By March, the Marines are attacking command complexes and cave systems whose surfaces reveal almost nothing about what lies below. On March 19th, fighting closes around a major Japanese headquarters structure associated with the northern defenses. Marine accounts describe a position that resists 75mm tank shells and even 40-pound shaped charges. Engineers finally bring bulldozers forward to seal a northern entrance and several ventilation openings. Then demolition teams use approximately 4 tons of explosives, divided among several charges, to wreck the complex. The number of Japanese killed inside is never established. The sequence matters because it captures the mature American method: first isolate, then suppress, then deny exits, then use engineering equipment to alter the structure itself. Finally apply explosives where the defender has nowhere useful to go. A Japanese soldier underground can survive shell fragments because rock protects him. He can survive flame in one gallery by retreating through another. But once a bulldozer covers an entrance or ventilation shaft, the geometry of survival changes. Airflow can be reduced. Escape routes disappear. Darkness becomes confinement. Even if defenders later dig out, they must expose themselves under American observation. The dozer is not replacing artillery. It is making artillery, tanks, infantry, and demolition more final. And by Iwo Jima, the process is no longer an improvisation by one Seabee on mono. It is part of the way the Americans dismantle fortified islands. The cost of Iwo Jima proves that no machine makes cave warfare easy. Nearly 7,000 Americans are killed and more than 19,000 are wounded. Almost the entire Japanese garrison dies. Kuribayashi does not prevent the island from falling, but he demonstrates how deeply prepared defenses can make every 100 yards expensive. For American planners studying the next operation, the implication is chilling. Iwo Jima is only about 8 square miles. Okinawa is vastly larger, populated by civilians, covered with ridges and limestone caves, and defended by an army exceeding 100,000 men when local auxiliaries and naval personnel are included. The invasion force will not be a division or corps-sized operation. Lieutenant General Simon Bolivar Buckner Jr.'s 10th Army Marshals, approximately 183,000 troops for the assault phases, with Army Exevive Corps under Major General John R. Hodge and 3rd Amphibious Corps under Major General Roy S. Geiger forming the main ground striking force. If Japanese commanders apply the lessons of Peleliu and Iwo Jima on Okinawa, every bulldozer the Americans possess will be needed not only to build an airbase after victory, but to help create victory itself. April 1st, 1945. Okinawa. Easter Sunday begins beneath the largest amphibious operation of the Pacific War. 10 older battleships, 9 cruisers, 23 destroyers and destroyer escorts, and more than 100 rocket gunboats participate in the supporting bombardment. During the first 24 hours, American ships fire approximately 3,800 tons of shells at the island. Almost 116,000 assault troops are assigned to the initial landings, and by nightfall, more than 60,000 Americans are ashore. Yet the beaches around Hagushi are strangely quiet. Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, commanding the Japanese 32nd Army, is not trying to defeat the Americans at the waterline. His defensive heart lies farther south around Shuri. Lieutenant General Isamu Cho and Colonel Hiromichi Yahara help shape a defense built on ridges, reverse slopes, caves, tunnels, and carefully registered artillery. The Japanese allow Buckner's men to build strength before forcing them into terrain where ships cannot see every target and tanks cannot simply race forward. The Americans quickly seize Yontan and Kadena airfields, and engineers begin work almost immediately. Bulldozers move across the landing area under a sky filled with aircraft. Roads expand, supply dumps appear, runways are repaired. The machinery of invasion is already transforming Okinawa, but to the south, another landscape waits, one in which the same machines will have to work under direct fire. When Exevive Corps reaches the Shuri defenses, movement slows violently. Kakazu Ridge, Tombstone Ridge, Nishibaru, Skyline, Maeda Escarpment, Kochi, and later Sugarloaf become names associated with repeated attacks and horrifying casualties. Japanese artillery is hidden in caves and reverse slope positions. Guns roll out, fire, and disappear again. Machine guns cover approaches from apertures almost invisible until they open. Rain turns roads into mud. Tanks slide or become trapped. Infantry climbs ridges while mortar fragments slice through vegetation and stone. The American solution again becomes combined arms at intimate range. Tanks fire into caves. Flamethrower tanks project burning fuel farther than infantry flamethrowers can. Engineers carry demolitions. Riflemen cover openings. Bulldozers create routes through destroyed villages and blasted coral, recover access after shelling, and help isolate or close positions. The Japanese target them whenever possible, because engineering equipment multiplies American strength. Kill a rifleman and one rifle disappears. Stop the bulldozer and tanks, ammunition carriers, ambulances, or flame vehicles behind it may lose their route. Yet American industrial capacity makes permanent denial difficult. Machines are repaired, replaced, or cannibalized. Navy records even describe Seabees improvising worn bulldozer parts from captured Japanese shell cases to keep equipment operating. The Defender is fighting not only American troops, but a maintenance system capable of putting damaged machines back onto the battlefield, and that system keeps grinding south. Imagine the position from inside a limestone cave. The naval bombardment has already passed. The ground shakes. Dust fills the chamber. Men press themselves against walls while explosions strike outside. Then the barrage moves elsewhere. Silence returns for a few seconds. A Japanese soldier crawls toward the entrance and sees smoke hanging across the ridge. Perhaps he believes the position has survived again. Then a machine gun opens from the American side, and bullets strike the cave mouth. A tank round detonates against rock. The soldier pulls back. Minutes later, a different vibration begins. Low, mechanical, repetitive, not the instantaneous concussion of artillery. Steel tracks, an engine under load. The sound becomes louder until voices inside the cave have to rise above it. Someone looks through a firing slit, and sees the edge of a bulldozer blade appearing through smoke. Rifle fire strikes it and ricochets. A machine gun cannot easily stop tons of steel from the front. The defenders need an anti-tank weapon, a mine, artillery, or a man willing to leave cover with an explosive charge. American infantry is waiting precisely for that movement. The blade lowers. Coral begins sliding. The entrance darkens as earth piles higher. For men inside, this is not bombardment anymore. It is the knowledge that the enemy is deliberately closing the door, and that is why the dozer can produce a different kind of terror. The process is not always burial. Sometimes the bulldozer's most important contribution is simply access. Japanese defenses depend heavily on terrain that channels Americans into predictable approaches. A ridge too steep for tanks is safer than one tanks can climb. A ravine blocked by debris creates a natural anti-tank obstacle. A road cratered by artillery buys time. Bulldozers attack those assumptions. Engineers cut new tracks across slopes. They fill shell holes. They remove wreckage. They build ramps. Tanks suddenly appear where Japanese defenders do not expect them. On Saipan, bulldozers flatten cane fields that conceal enemy troops. On Iwo Jima, they carve routes through volcanic ash. On Okinawa, they keep supply roads functioning in conditions where rain, shellfire, and traffic continuously destroy them. American veterans later remember the bulldozer as almost ubiquitous in the Pacific Engineering War, and the Army's official history describes it as one of the most familiar images of engineers fighting Japan. This matters because wars are usually remembered through glamorous weapons, fighters, battleships, tanks, artillery. But those weapons are useless if they cannot reach ammunition, fuel, firing positions, and roads. The dozer is the machine that converts American industrial production into forward movement. Every mile it cuts through an island shortens the distance between the Japanese defender and the weapons intended to destroy him. By May 1945, Okinawa becomes a battlefield of mud, shattered villages, tree stumps, exposed limestone, and blackened cave mouths. Heavy rain nearly stops armored operations during part of the month. Tanks bog down or remain roadbound. Supply trucks churn tracks into liquid trenches. Infantrymen sleep wet. Bodies cannot always be recovered quickly. Artillery fire strips hills of vegetation until ridgelines look like broken teeth. In this environment, bulldozers become recovery tools as much as assault tools. Roads must be rebuilt again and again. Vehicles must be pulled free. Gun positions need platforms. Wounded men need evacuation routes. When rain ends and armor returns, engineers again make the movement possible. Japanese troops, watching from high ground, see something profoundly discouraging. Destruction that would paralyze a less mechanized army is repaired with astonishing speed. A road disappears under shellfire and reappears under a bulldozer blade. A crater that took explosives seconds to create can be filled. A collapsed embankment becomes a ramp. A ruined village becomes road material. The Japanese can damage the battlefield, but they cannot keep it damaged faster than the Americans rebuild it. And every hour the dozers work, Ushijima's defensive system becomes smaller. That psychological asymmetry is central to the story. Japanese fortification doctrine assumes the attacker must pay in blood for terrain. The Americans accept that reality, but increasingly substitute machinery wherever machinery can take part of the risk. If an infantry squad needs 6 hours to dig a protected route under fire, a bulldozer may push it in minutes. If men would have to carry rubble by hand to close an entrance, a blade can move tons at once. If a tank cannot cross a ditch, engineers can fill it. This does not eliminate casualties. Operators themselves are killed and wounded, and infantry still has to protect them. But it changes the exchange rate. The Japanese defender sees something he cannot easily match. Japan has engineers and construction equipment, but by 1944 and 1945, it cannot deliver heavy machinery, fuel, spare parts, and replacement vehicles to isolated island garrisons at anything approaching American scale. Submarines, aircraft, and ships make resupply increasingly dangerous. American formations arrive with entire construction battalions behind the assault waves. The Japanese build a fortress over months, and then watch enemy machines begin altering it within hours of landing. That is not merely tactical pressure. It is visible proof of the industrial imbalance deciding the Pacific War. The Seabees themselves understand that symbolism. Their bulldozers become icons in wartime newspapers, battalion histories, advertisements, and even Hollywood. The 1944 film The Fighting Seabees turns construction troops into action heroes, and Tussauds' destruction of the Mono Island pillbox becomes associated with the image of a bulldozer used as a combat weapon. Yet the reality is less glamorous. Heavy equipment operators often work slowly and visibly near the front. They cannot dive into a foxhole without abandoning the machine. Their engines announce their presence. Dust can reveal them. A Japanese observer can call artillery onto a dozer long before the operator knows he has been spotted. When a machine throws a track under fire, repairing it may expose mechanics in open ground. When the blade strikes a buried mine, armor intended primarily for debris may offer little protection. The operator's courage lies in continuing to move, while every enemy position nearby can hear him. Tussauds later minimizes his own feat by noting that his blade provides protection, while Lieutenant Turnbull stands exposed, with only his weapon and nerve. That humility does not change what Mono demonstrates. The bulldozer can become a weapon only because men are willing to drive construction machinery into a zone designed to destroy anything that moves. The tactical relationship between dozer and infantry becomes almost symbiotic. A bulldozer without covering fire is vulnerable. Infantry without engineering support can be trapped by fortifications. So riflemen watch cave mouths while the machine works. Machine guns fire whenever a Japanese soldier appears. Tanks engage apertures. Mortars strike reverse slopes. Engineers guide the operator because visibility from behind the blade can be poor. Sometimes the driver cannot see the exact entrance he is trying to close and must rely on hand signals from men standing where enemy bullets can reach them. Each movement is deliberate. Forward, blade down, push, reverse, turn, forward again. To an observer miles away, it might look like ordinary construction. To men within a cave, every cycle changes the shape of their world. The pile outside rises. Light shrinks. A firing slit becomes blocked. The possibility of escape through the main mouth disappears. If another exit exists, defenders may rush toward it, only to find American infantry covering it. The machine itself is rarely enough, but combined with suppression, it produces a form of battlefield engineering that is methodical, personal, and difficult to reverse. The Japanese have built fortifications to survive explosions. The Americans increasingly answer by making survival inside the fortification the problem. This evolution reaches an almost industrial scale on Okinawa because construction begins before the island is secured. Approximately 55,000 Seabees are eventually assigned to Okinawa, organized into massive engineering formations responsible for airfields, roads, harbors, hospitals, storage areas, and base infrastructure. Yontan develops into an American airfield while fighting continues farther south. Kadena expands, hills are cut down, ravines are filled, water systems and communications spread. By June 17th, the first American-built 7,000-foot runway at Yontan is operational, and by the end of that month, 5 air bases are ready for heavy aircraft. The transformation is staggering. A Japanese defender near Shuri can be fighting for a cave while, only miles behind American lines, bulldozers are already preparing the island for attacks on Japan itself. Strategically, that may be the most frightening meaning of the sound. The machine is not only coming to the cave, it is announcing that the attacker assumes victory is inevitable enough to start building the next campaign before the current one is finished. Ushijima's 32nd Army still fights with extraordinary determination. Japanese artillery inflicts heavy losses. Counterattacks in early May produce savage fighting. American tanks suffer badly. Official army analysis records 153 tanks destroyed during the campaign, with many more damaged, and an overall armored vehicle casualty rate around 60%. When armor outruns infantry at Kakazu Ridge, Japanese close assault teams punish it severely, proving that technology without combined arms can fail catastrophically. That near failure is important. Bulldozers are not magical. Tanks are not magical. Flamethrowers are not magical. The American advantage appears when these systems cooperate. Infantry prevents Japanese soldiers from reaching vehicles with satchel charges. Tanks suppress caves so engineers can move. Artillery isolates the ridge. Bulldozers prepare the route. Medical teams evacuate casualties along the same roads. Mechanics repair machines behind the line. Supply units bring fuel and explosives forward. It is an entire chain, and break one link badly enough, and the assault stalls. Kakazu proves that Japanese defenders can still destroy expensive American machines when those machines become separated from infantry. The Americans learn, adjust, and return with tighter coordination, making the next advance harder to stop. By late May, the Shuri line begins to crack. Ushijima orders a withdrawal towards southern Okinawa, rather than allowing his army to be completely surrounded near Shuri. Rain covers the movement and slows American pursuit. The Japanese preserve thousands of troops for a final defensive phase around the Kiamu Peninsula, but the withdrawal also abandons positions constructed over months. American troops move through caves filled with ammunition, abandoned weapons, documents, blood, and bodies. Bulldozers follow, roads extend south, guns move forward. The same pattern repeats at a larger scale. A Japanese defensive line that appears formidable on a map becomes useless once its transportation links, observation posts, and mutually supporting strongpoints are separated. Construction equipment helps consolidate every American gain so that a counterattack cannot easily reverse it. The battlefield behind the front stops looking Japanese. American signs appear. Telephone wire runs along roads. Dumps grow. Vehicle parks emerge. Engineers grade surfaces where artillery has stripped the soil. The front moves a few hundred yards, then the industrial system behind it moves too. For Japanese soldiers retreating south, the engine noise follows. June 18, 1945. Buckner moves near the front to observe marine operations when Japanese artillery strikes the area. Coral fragments or splinters thrown by the blast hit him in the chest, and the 10th Army commander dies shortly afterward. Major General Roy Geiger assumes temporary command, becoming the first Marine officer to command a field army. The death of Buckner proves that, even in the final days, Okinawa remains lethal at the highest level. Brigadier General Claudius Easley, assistant commander of the 96th Infantry Division, is killed the next day. Yet Japanese strategic options are gone. Ushijima and Cho commit suicide on June 22, near Hill 89. Organized resistance collapses into scattered pockets. Thousands of Japanese soldiers still fight, hide, surrender, or die during mopping up operations. Caves remain dangerous because nobody knows whether the darkness contains wounded men, civilians, ammunition, or soldiers waiting with grenades. Americans seal many positions rather than repeatedly sending men inside. The bulldozer therefore remains useful even after the front line has passed. The machine that opens roads also closes holes, converting a battlefield honeycombed by danger into ground an occupying army can control. The casualty totals make clear that American engineering superiority does not make Okinawa cheap. Tens of thousands of American soldiers, Marines, and sailors become casualties during the campaign and associated naval fighting. Japanese military deaths exceed 100,000 by many official reckonings, while civilian losses are enormous and impossible to calculate precisely. The island is devastated. Villages disappear. Agricultural land becomes battlefield. Families shelter in caves that can also contain Japanese troops, placing civilians in terrifying danger whenever Americans attack underground positions. Any account of cave reduction must remember that not every cave contains only armed soldiers. Psychological warfare teams use loudspeakers and leaflets to persuade civilians and Japanese troops to surrender, and thousands eventually do. The decision to seal or destroy an entrance can carry consequences unseen by the men outside. Technology provides power, not perfect knowledge, and Okinawa's human cost exposes the terrible ambiguity of fighting an enemy embedded underground among a civilian population. By July 2nd, the Okinawa campaign is formally declared complete. American engineers continue building at astonishing speed. Airfields, highways, ammunition storage sites, ports, hospitals, and supply areas spread across ground that weeks earlier is covered by Japanese defenses. The strategic direction is obvious. Okinawa is intended to become a staging base for Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands. Bulldozers that have pushed through coral around cave entrances now grade runways for bombers and fighters expected to support that invasion. This dual identity is the heart of their importance. The same blade destroys and creates. It can bury a bunker in the morning and level an airstrip in the afternoon. It can push aside the wreckage of battle and then construct the infrastructure for the next one. Japan's defenders confront not merely an enemy that can destroy islands, but one that can rebuild captured islands faster than Japan can reinforce them. The bulldozer is therefore an industrial weapon in the deepest sense. It converts conquest into permanent operational capacity. That helps explain why the machine occupies such a peculiar place in Pacific War memory. Artillery is designed to kill. A tank is designed for battle. A bomber exists to deliver destruction. The bulldozer arrives with an innocent civilian identity. Before the war, similar tractors build highways, dams, farms, mines, and cities. In the Pacific, the same mechanism acquires armor, military markings, and combat crews. It cuts through jungle. It pushes wrecked aircraft aside. It builds airstrips within bomber range of the next Japanese position. And occasionally, it goes directly against men inside fortifications. The shock lies in seeing a tool of construction become part of a killing system without changing its basic mechanics. The blade does exactly what it always does, pushes whatever lies ahead. On Mono Island, what lies ahead happens to be a pillbox containing 12 Japanese soldiers. On later islands, what lies ahead may be coral, rubble, an anti-tank ditch, a cave entrance, or the remains of a village. The machine possesses no hatred and no fear. The operator chooses the task, and that mechanical indifference makes its approach especially disturbing. For Japanese defenders, the deeper strategic message is impossible to ignore. Every American bulldozer represents shipping capacity. The machine has to be manufactured in the United States, transported across thousands of miles of ocean, unloaded under combat conditions, fueled, repaired, supplied with parts, and supported by mechanics. If the Americans can afford to bring heavy earth-moving equipment into the first waves of an island assault, then their logistical strength reaches far beyond rifles and ammunition. Japan, by 1944, faces shrinking merchant shipping, fuel shortages, submarines attacking sea lanes, and Allied aircraft dominating increasingly large areas of the Pacific. Many isolated garrisons receive little hope of reinforcement. Americans, by contrast, bring not only combat troops, but enough machinery to remake the island after taking it. A Japanese soldier does not need access to economic statistics to understand the imbalance. He can hear it outside his cave. One engine becomes several. A rough path becomes a road. Trucks begin moving. Artillery follows. Searchlights appear. Airfield machinery runs through the night. The enemy's logistical superiority becomes audible. This is why the phrase, "more frightening than artillery," captures a genuine battlefield logic, even though it should not be treated as a universal authenticated quotation from Japanese soldiers. Artillery represents danger. The bulldozer represents inevitability. A shell may miss. A bombardment may end. A bunker can absorb fragments. Deep rock can survive blast pressure. But when the bulldozer appears after the barrage, it means the Americans are no longer trying to kill the position from a distance. They have reached it. They control enough of the surrounding terrain to bring forward a slow, vulnerable engineering machine. Riflemen are probably covering it. Tanks or flamethrowers may be nearby. Demolition men are waiting. The position has been isolated sufficiently that someone believes there is time to move Earth deliberately across it. The engine is therefore an announcement of tactical defeat before the occupants themselves are dead. That psychological distinction is enormous. There is another reason the sound is so different underground. Human beings are acutely sensitive to threats they cannot see. Artillery provides an explosive climax. Fear rises before impact, and then releases when the shell lands somewhere else. A bulldozer approaching a cave creates sustained anticipation. The defenders hear the engine, but cannot easily determine exactly where the blade is. Rock distorts vibration. The sound stops. Is the machine disabled? Has it moved away? Then the engine revs again, closer. Something scrapes across stone. Dust descends. Light changes at the entrance. Men inside must decide whether to expose themselves and attack or remain underground. Every second forces another choice. The machine's slowness becomes psychologically cruel because the occupants understand the process while it unfolds. The threat is not sudden death alone. It is entombment, suffocation, isolation, or being forced through a secondary exit covered by enemy weapons. In a military culture that places enormous pressure on soldiers not to surrender, those possibilities can be more terrifying than a clean death from a shell. Yet the American side experiences the bulldozers' sound almost in reverse. Exhausted riflemen pinned below a ridge may hear an engine approaching from the rear and understand that engineers have finally opened a route. A tank may be coming. Ammunition can move up. A crater will be filled. A wounded man may be evacuated. A bunker that has resisted grenades can be attacked mechanically. The same noise that tells one side its position is being dismantled tells the other side that reinforcement has arrived. Few battlefield technologies express psychological superiority so clearly. The machine is confidence made mechanical. An army does not drive a bulldozer toward enemy fire unless it expects to remain on the ground afterward. It is a weapon of possession as much as destruction. Tanks can raid forward and retreat. Aircraft appear and disappear. Artillery fires from miles away. The bulldozer stays because its purpose is to alter the land for whoever expects to own it next. Aurelio Tassone's attack on October 27, 1943, therefore becomes important, far beyond the 12 Japanese soldiers killed in one pillbox. He does not invent Pacific engineering warfare in a single moment, and later, bulldozer tactics develop through thousands of separate decisions by Seabees, Army engineers, Marines, tankers, and infantrymen. But his charge on Mono Island dramatizes the principle perfectly. A Japanese position stops the advance. Conventional gunfire has not removed it quickly enough. A construction machine is present. An officer recognizes that its mass and blade can solve the problem. The operator agrees to drive forward. The machine crushes the obstacle. Afterward, Tassone does something almost symbolic. He pushes earth over the wreckage and leaves the ground flattened. The fortification is not merely captured. It is erased from the landscape. American naval history preserves the story because it embodies what the Seabees represent, the ability to fight and build in the same movement. By the final year of the war, that principle reaches strategic scale. On Guam, Saipan, Tinian, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, construction forces follow combat forces so closely that the boundary between battle and base building nearly disappears. Airfields captured from Japan are repaired and expanded for American aircraft. Roads designed for small island traffic become military arteries. Coral is quarried, crushed, and spread. Forest is removed. Fuel tanks rise. Harbors fill with shipping. The American advance does not simply move a front line westward. It creates a chain of industrial platforms across the Pacific. Bulldozers are among the machines that physically build that chain. Once B-29 operations begin from the Marianas, Japan's home islands come under sustained strategic bombing. After Iwo Jima is captured, fighters can operate from the island, and damaged B-29s gain an emergency landing field. Okinawa places American power on the Ryukyu doorstep. Behind each strategic leap is an engineering force, turning captured ground into infrastructure. For Japanese commanders, this presents a nearly unsolvable problem. They can make the landing expensive. They can build deeper caves. They can camouflage artillery. They can wait until Americans move inland before opening fire. They can force tanks into kill zones. They can use mines, suicide attacks, infiltration, and reverse slope positions. These tactics kill thousands of Americans and delay operations for weeks or months. But they do not solve the industrial equation. Every island lost becomes an American base. Every base reduces the distance to the next Japanese position. Every shorter distance allows more aircraft, ships, supplies, and machinery to arrive. The very terrain Japanese soldiers die defending is turned against the next Japanese garrison. A bulldozer makes that transformation visible in real time. It pushes away the defender's earthworks and then uses the same earth to support the attacker. The final irony arrives after Japan's surrender in August 1945. Marines landing in the Japanese home islands encounter civilians fascinated by American vehicles and heavy equipment. Official Marine histories note the amazement created by jeeps, trucks, bulldozers, and other earth-moving machinery. The machines that have become part of the terrifying industrial advance across the Pacific are now seen operating without enemy fire around them. Their power is still obvious, But the purpose has changed again. Roads, camps, and occupation facilities replace cave assaults. The same tracks that once grind toward Japanese fortifications now cross a defeated country at peace. That transformation reveals something larger about the way the United States fights World War II. American victory is not produced by one miracle weapon. It is produced by systems. Factories create machines. Shipyards create transports. Oil refineries provide fuel. Navy vessels move equipment. Seabees build bases. Engineers open roads. Mechanics keep engines alive. Infantry protects them. Artillery and aircraft suppress the enemy. Intelligence locates positions. Medical units preserve manpower. Logistics feeds all of it. The bulldozer sits in the middle of that network, unglamorous but indispensable. The Army's own engineering history later identifies the bulldozer as one of the most familiar images remembered by veterans of the war against Japan, precisely because it seems to be everywhere. And everywhere it goes, it denies the defender one of war's oldest advantages: terrain, mountains, forests, ravines, mud, coral, beaches, and caves have protected soldiers for centuries. The bulldozer does not make geography irrelevant, but it makes geography negotiable. A road can be cut, a slope can be reduced, a ditch can be filled, a wall can be pushed down, a crater can disappear, a cave can be sealed. The machine gives an army the ability to argue physically with the landscape until the landscape begins serving the attacker instead of the defender. In the Pacific, where Japanese strategy increasingly depends on terrain multiplying the power of isolated garrisons, that capability becomes devastating. The image at Mono Island remains the purest expression of it. Tasson sits behind the controls. Japanese machine gun fire strikes around him. New Zealand soldiers keep the defenders' heads down. The bulldozer moves forward at a speed that would be laughable for a tank charge. There is no turret rotating toward the enemy. No cannon recoils. No dramatic burst of acceleration. Just a diesel engine, steel tracks, and a blade. The machine reaches the logs. Tasson raises and drops the blade. The structure gives way. Men who moments earlier possess a protected firing position suddenly have tons of timber and earth collapsing around them. Then the bulldozer continues working until the place where the pillbox stood becomes flattened ground. 20 months later, on Okinawa, the principle is no longer an improvisation. American infantrymen face cave complexes that artillery has failed to eliminate permanently. Tanks and flamethrowers suppress them. Engineers attack openings. Bulldozers keep roads open, expose positions, assist in sealing entrances, and build the infrastructure that lets overwhelming force remain close behind the front. Japan's defenders have answered American firepower by going underground. America answers by bringing machines capable of moving the ground itself. That is the escalation hidden inside the simple sound of tracks and an engine. Artillery tells a soldier that the enemy can reach his position. The bulldozer tells him that the enemy has come close enough to change the earth around him, intends to remain there, and may soon remove the position from the battlefield entirely.